Hey guys, what's up? Nick Techno here, and today we're going to be doing a full versus battle of the Galaxy Z Fold 6 versus the Google 9 Pro Fold. So let's get right into it. So obviously, I do have both phones here. I have the Pixel 9 Pro Fold and the Galaxy Z Fold 6. I'm going to take the boxes away in a second here. It's just more for aesthetics. But I do want to get one thing out of the way really quick. I am going to leave the cases on for this review or this battle, essentially, just because I like both of these cases I have on my phones, and they use adhesive strips. So sadly, every time you take it off and put it back on, it ruins the adhesive and thus pops off way more easy. And it's just a super big annoyance. So I do apologize. You're not going to get, obviously, like, the tried and true, like, this naked version of the phones, I should say, but I promise I'm going to talk about everything else in this video, going from what's good about each phone, what's bad about each phone, and basically at the end, give you a final verdict of which you should choose if you are looking to get one of these phones, or if you already have one of these phones, should you look at maybe returning it or exchanging it out for the other. So I figured the easiest way to structure this video is first, I'm going to go over all the things I love about the Galaxy Z Fold 6 first, and then we're going to go over all the things I love about the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, and then kind of what I think is basically the same on both phones, and then again give you my overall verdict of which one you should go with. So the Z Fold 6 is actually my third Z Fold device. I started with the Z Fold 3, then I got the 4, and then I jumped to the 6. I went to a couple other devices before the 6, but when this came out, I knew I had to pre-order it and I had to get it in my hands because I loved the form factor of it and I thought it just would be like the ultimate folding device. And then the Pro came out, the Pro 9, I should say, came out for the Pixel Fold line. And this was an absolute game changer coming from the original Pixel Fold, which I absolutely hated the design of. I know there's a lot of lovers of that phone, but I'm going to be honest, the Passport look just looks super ugly. I wasn't a fan of it. So when they came up with this one, it really caught my eye, I'm not going to lie. So I only had this for a couple months, I think about 3.5 months. And then this guy came out, and that's when I really wanted to look at the Pixel line. So now that it's on sale, I picked it up, and I've had this for about 2 weeks now. And I've been using this as my daily phone, and this guy has sadly been kind of collecting dust. But again, for this video, I came back to both, and I'm putting them head-to-head for this reason, to give you kind of a take of which one I prefer. But I'm going to say right now, just because I'm using this one right now and it's the newer phone, that doesn't automatically give it a win, or it's going to be me saying at the end of this video that I'm going to be staying with it. So again, just keep to the end of the video and you'll understand my points here. But that being said, the first point I'm going to point out on the Z Fold 6 is the placement of the fingerprint scanner and the volume rocker. So as you can see on the right side here, we have the power button / fingerprint scanner and the volume. The power is below the volume. My personal opinion, it should always be this way for every manufacturer. I don't know what the hell Google is smoking, but for some reason, every phone, and it has to be just they want to be different. That's the only thing I can think of. They put the power button above the volume rocker, and this is such a headache. I know it's a small gripe, it's a nitpick, it makes me sound, just dumb for saying this, but genuinely, when you switch out phones as much as I do, and especially if you're used to some phones like the Samsungs, coming to Google, it is a pain in the butt. Every single time I'm trying to turn the phone on, I end up just like changing the volume over and over again, or vice versa. It's just very annoying. I don't know why Google does this. And not only that, but it's just more uncomfortable. Every single time I want to unlock my phone, I have to inch my way up the phone, and I don't have very small hands. I mean, I got regular dude hands. So if I'm having problems with this, I'm sure 90% of users are as well. So I don't know why Google has not changed that. So yeah, Samsung definitely gets a leg up for having that fingerprint scanner right in the perfect position. I just genuinely don't know why Google has decided not to really go down that route. Just very weird, very odd. The next point on my Z Fold 6 is that it does have a much smaller form factor, which is better for one-handed usage, as well as it's much lighter in the hand. Even with cases on it, this phone is clearly way lighter than the Pixel. Now, they're not really both heavy devices, I will say that. I mean, if you're putting this up against another slab phone, I will say the Google Pixel is going to feel a little bit heavier, but both these are pretty much the same when it comes to bigger flagship phones. Like if you put it up against the newest iPhone or maybe the new Ultra phone from Samsung, they're not going to be much heavier, but they are noticeable. And of course, when you're looking at foldable devices, putting 2 and 2 together, the Z Fold is definitely lighter than the Pixel Fold. But I will say again, I haven't really had an issue or felt like this was too heavy or it got just annoying to hold or, I felt in my pocket or nothing like that. They're both the same in that regard. But it's just something you have to point out. This is definitely a lighter device. And again, for the one-handed usage, I can see why people would really love this form factor. Being able to just take it out of your pocket real quick, swipe over. You can even text a full message with one hand, swipe down the notification shade, and really do what you need to do, all again in the palm of your hand. Where with the wider form factor of the Pixel, you're probably going to have to do a lot of things two-handed, just like you would with a regular slab phone. Now, again, that comes down to personal preference. Is that an annoyance for you or not? For me, it's really not, but I know for some people that is an annoyance, so it's something I really wanted to point out. Next is probably the biggest thing for me with Samsung getting a W over Google is just the amount of customization they've implemented in their software. You can see I'm already, I've gotten used to the Google now, so I keep going up. It's so annoying. But anyway, so yeah, the customization is a big part for Samsung, big W for them, where you can pretty much do whatever you want with your home screen without having to download a third-party launcher or doing any type of rooting of your device. It's all just straight out of the box. You can do what you want. I know some people get kind of pissed off at some Samsung for putting a ton of bloatware on their phones. Yeah, it's annoying, but 90% of them you can either hide or completely get rid of to where they're not really a nuisance at all. They're not a problem. So that's kind of just a null and void point, in my opinion. If you're going over one phone over another just because of bloatware, I think that's kind of a dumb reason, because in 95% of the case, you can get rid of it. That is not the case for Google, however. So a good example of this is the at a glance feature. So by default, your Google Pixel will come like this. You have the at a glance with your date, time, and something else or whatever. But what I did is I disabled the time and I downloaded a third-party app with the clock so I had it more clean. The reason I had to do this is because the Google clock always puts the date underneath it. You can't turn that off. And I don't know about you guys, but the date is always on the at a glance. I don't want to have the date in two separate spots on one screen. I just find that kind of ugly, and maybe OCD kicks in. I don't know what it is, but it just looks bad. And you might be saying, well, then just turn the date off up here or get rid of that. Well, you can't. So even if you go into the at a glance settings and you turn this off, it's still there, and it's just the date. So I don't know why Google does this. Another thing is you can't even change the position of the Google search bar. You can't get rid of it. So for instance, I've always had the Google search bar at the top on my phones. I know one of my guys, Flossie Carter, love his videos. Huge shout out. If you haven't checked his videos out, please go give him a follow. But that dude, he does it the exact same way I do. He talks about having the search bar at the top and putting his apps at the bottom. And when you go to Google, it just feels so awkward having it down here. I know for most people, it's probably easier to reach with it, whatever, but I'm used to this. And the fact that I can't do this on the Pixel is such a downgrade. I don't know why they do this, where they're forcing these features upon their users, just like an iPhone. It's just weird, man. So yeah, that's obviously a nitpick because you can download a third-party app or a launcher. I know that. But I just don't want to have to go out of my way to do that. You should be able to edit these features right out of the gate, and on Pixel, you can't. Another big thing too, and to give credit to Pixel, this is actually only a feature on Z Fold devices. I have not seen this feature on any other folding devices in the market, so again, take this with a grain of salt, but this is a huge plus for Samsung. You can have a different wallpaper and a different setup on the inner display compared to the outer. So as an example, you can see what my background looks like, all my apps, the orientation, what they look like here on the front. And if I open the phone, look at that. Different wallpaper. My icons are in different places. I have a weather app up here. Everything looks a little bit different. I have some notes apps. I have steps. I have my storage, battery life. None of this is on the front screen. I absolutely love this. I wish every single folding device had this feature to where you could manipulate the inner display to be different than your outer display. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I open my phone, I don't like seeing these split pages. So for instance, with Google, you can see my front page here. And if I swipe over, I have it with all these drawers for all my different apps. And I have the weather app, right? But when I open it up, you can see it just looks like two different pages kind of smushed together. Now, obviously, it's a nitpick. You can get past it. I've gotten used to it. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something that is annoying, and I definitely wanted to bring it up in this video. So, yeah, customization, man. Samsung is always going to win in that regard. And even if people don't like their software compared to the Google's OS, I definitely think Samsung has a leg up when it comes just to overall user customization and options to the user. Next is better multitasking on the inner display. So these bigger displays, they're really nice for multitasking and reading documents and getting stuff on a bigger display. Pretty obvious. I know there's gripes out there of people that don't believe in folding devices because of video playback, and I understand when you're watching a video on a device like this, it's annoying having these big boxes. Sorry, Jakey, I'm going to turn you down. Yeah, these big black boxes, right, that really take up a lot of the screen real estate, which ends up basically being the same size as a regular slab phone sideways. I get that. I understand that argument, but the biggest thing that these phones have over those slab phones is multitasking. But let's say, for instance, you wanted to watch a YouTube video, but on the side, you wanted to do something else. Like, I don't know, maybe look at your gallery. So you bring up your gallery app to the right here or to the left, and then boom, you got your gallery on the left, you got your YouTube video playing on the right. Very handy. Now you can do the same thing obviously on the Pixel, but the big thing you can do on Samsung that you cannot do on the Pixel is you can have up to 3 apps running at once. Now, I know some people are probably going to make the argument like, well, how often are you ever going to use this? And I agree. It's nothing that I would probably do too often. It's every now and then, but you know, it's cool to have this ability to be able to have 3 separate applications so you can drag and drop features from one to the other, if you're copying text from one app to the other, or if you're just, I don't know, you're somebody that likes multitasking and you just do a ton of things at once. You have the ability to do that. And not only that, but you also have the ability to do floating windows depending on what the app is. There we go. So there, now we have technically 4 apps going on at once. We have the floating window in the middle that you can manipulate, bring around, do what you want. And you have the 3 apps running in the background. Absolute nutcase if you do this on a daily basis, but you have the ability to do that. On Pixel, you can do 2 apps next to each other. I mean, it's at least it's good they gave us an option to do 2 apps at once, but yeah, Google is definitely slacking in the multitasking department. And I didn't go over every feature there. There's a lot of different multitasking things you can do with these phones, but yeah, Google Pixel for sure is lacking when it comes to multitasking. Another big thing is the MagSafe accessories and wireless charging. So both of these phones technically have wireless charging built in, which is really nice to see. So the Samsung Z Fold has 15-watt wireless charging and reverse wireless charging. If you don't know what that is, if I, for some reason, had 2 phones on me, or maybe my watch or this watch or something, and I wanted to bring it with on vacation and I didn't bring the charger for the watch, I can lay the watch on the back here and my phone will charge it wirelessly. It's super convenient. I've actually used it multiple times in a pinch. Love that feature. Sadly, no reverse wireless charging on the Pixel, but there is wireless charging. So this is 15 watts, 7.5 watts. So very big difference there. So this charges way quicker, way slower. Not a big deal though in the grand scheme of things, because if you're charging wirelessly, you're not really in a hurry most of the time. So again, not a big deal, but I will say that the wireless charging is a much grander experience on the Z Fold because of the placement of the coil. So the charging coil is right in the middle of the phone, as it normally is for most smartphones. For some reason, the Pixel, and by the way, I have this in the wrong spot. I realize it's actually a little bit lower than this. So the charging coil is technically like right in here on the Pixel, which is ridiculous. The problem with that is 90% of already built wireless chargers in the market just don't work with this thing, because you put it on the stand and it just doesn't work because it thinks the coil should be higher. The other big issue is that for MagSafe, there is absolutely no MagSafe accessories out there, and most of my stuff is MagSafe nowadays, even though obviously I'm with Android. But I love the MagSafe accessories. They work great for my car and for my office and for my room, all that stuff. And now obviously you might see I have a MagSafe ring. Yes, it does work. I mean, I can connect it to the MagSafe, but I will say with the Pixel, 90% of the time it doesn't charge correctly, or it just disconnects, or the worst part is it overheats. And then second of all, so there's like 3 big problems with this. So 1, it doesn't charge all the way. 2, it overheats. And 3, for some weird reason with MagSafe accessories, as soon as this connects, the screen starts flickering and turning off and on and going crazy. I've been a part of the subreddit for the Pixel for a while now, and a lot of people have had this problem. So it's not just my unit. It's not defective. It is a problem with the magnets or whatever in the device. I don't really know how they set up, but it is a problem. So if you are somebody to use MagSafe accessories, I would honestly say stay away from the Pixel Fold, at least for now, because it just does not work. They are absolutely horrendous. And even though it has wireless charging, it's kind of useless. So if you are somebody who likes MagSafe, you like wireless charging, this might be a deal breaker for you and might be a reason you want to stick with the Z Fold because it works flawlessly. I've had no problems with any MagSafe accessories working with this device. It does not make the screen flicker. It doesn't have anything like that. And yeah, it works great. So that is one big thing I wanted to get on this video. I know not a lot of reviewers have talked about that or even mentioned that. And it is something I've noticed happen a lot with the Pixel. Another point is this has DeX built in. Essentially, you can plug this into a monitor and use it as a mobile desktop computer. It's pretty crazy. I'm not going to give you an example here because you've probably seen it everywhere else. And if you don't know what DeX is, there's a ton of videos on YouTube that showcase what it does. This does not have that. There's nothing like that. Apparently, there is an update coming to Google Pixel where they're going to implement something like DeX, but that's just not the case yet. So that is definitely a leg up for Samsung. On top of the faster wireless charging on Samsung, we also have faster wired charging. So we have 25 watt wired charging, which is basically 0 to 100% in about an hour. And then on the Google Pixel, we only have 21 watts of wired charger. So it's not too big of a difference. It's 4 watts, but in the grand scheme of things, you're looking again at an hour for this phone, roughly like an hour and 20, hour and 30 for this phone. So if charging your phone really quickly is a really important feature for you, the Z Fold 6 is going to win every single time. Next, and probably one of the biggest differences between these devices is their performance or / internal hardware. So this is running the Snapdragon Gen 3 CPU with Adreno 750 GPU. It doesn't really matter if you don't know what that means or what those numbers are. Basically, this CPU is much stronger. The brain of the phone is much quicker than the Tensor G4 chip in the Google phone. For some reason, I don't know why Google decides to do this, but they want to make their own architecture, their own chips. And, I commend them for it. I give them props for it. But in reality, they should just stick with the Snapdragon. Just do what every other phone manufacturer is doing because it works and it's much faster. In a day-to-day usage, you're not going to notice a big difference between these two phones, but I will say in gaming performance, I did notice a lot more lag and frame drops and stuff with the Pixel versus the Z Fold 6. So if gaming is a big thing for you on the go, Z Fold 6 is going to beat the Pixel any day. But again, for everyday performance, for regular app usages, if you're just sliding between different apps, just going back and forth, multitasking and stuff like that, you're not going to notice much of a difference between these phones. I'm going to be honest with you. Even on paper, the Galaxy destroys the Google every single time. But in everyday use, I haven't really noticed many issues with the Pixel in terms of multitasking or feeling like, oh, I'm not going to have enough time to go between apps. It's gonna lag, it's gonna stutter, it's gonna crash. And honestly, no, I have not had that happen whatsoever with the Pixel. If anything, this actually feels sometimes a little bit more fluid than the Galaxy, and that might come down to software, because one thing I gotta give props to Google is they do have that beautiful software optimizations, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, performance on paper, obviously, the Galaxy wins, but when it comes to the Pixel, it's no slouch at all when it comes to performance. But I just wanted to get that out of the way that this technically has the better internals. One thing that is kind of weird, though, with the Galaxy versus the Pixel is for some reason, the Pixel has more RAM, has 16 gigabytes of internal RAM versus 12 on the Z Fold. But the Z Fold seems to have better memory usage than the Pixel. And what I mean by that is, if you go into your recent apps, the Z Fold seems to hold a lot more apps in its memory a lot longer than the Pixel does. Now, this might have to do with their battery optimizations on the Pixel. I don't really know. I haven't figured that out yet, but I've noticed that just in terms of recent apps, it only holds roughly around 10, I want to say, maybe a little bit more than that. But if you go to the very far back and try to reload, most of the time, it just completely has to reload from scratch. Where on the Z Fold, I've noticed when I go back to an app I haven't been to for a while, it's ready to go, and it knows exactly where I've been, even if it's been a couple days. It's kind of wild. So even though it has less RAM on the Z Fold, I give it the leg up for just essentially going back to previous apps or memory usage over the Pixel for that reason alone. On the last point I'll give to the Samsung over the Google Pixel is this one stays a lot cooler in the hand for longer period sessions, or if you're gaming and stuff like that. Anything with heavier usage, this phone stays a lot cooler, and I think that has to come down to that vapor chamber they have installed that just works really well. I have not had any type of overheating yet with my Google Pixel, but I'll be honest, I've definitely felt like I've gotten there. So for a good example, after wireless charging for 5 minutes, the phone was so hot to the touch, I literally had to lay it on my desk because I was worried about burning myself. Not only that, but just there's certain times when I was watching a video for like 20 minutes, I was watching an episode of Daredevil on my Pixel, and I noticed the back of the phone was getting pretty warm. Not to the point of hurting me or feel like I had to lay it down because it was too warm or anything like that, but I did feel it in my hands through the case, mind you. And not only that, but after I swiped out of Daredevil to go look at a text or something, it just felt very sluggish, where I've never experienced that once on the Z Fold. So if overheating or heating issues is something on your mind, or if you live in a very hot climate, that might be another reason to probably stick with the Z Fold over the Pixel, at least until maybe they roll out some updates that could help with the overheating situation. I'm not sure, but for right now, once again, I have not actually had it overheat to the point of restarting or turning off, but it does get sluggish over time when it's hot, and you do feel it in the hand versus the Z Fold. All right, and now let's move on to what I like more about the Pixel over the Z Fold. And I know up to this point, the video really sounds like I love the Z Fold and I hate the Pixel, but I promise that is not the case whatsoever. So on the Pixel, the biggest compliment I can give this device, and this might kind of be sacrilege to some of you Android people out there. I'm an Android guy myself, don't worry. But this genuinely is the iPhone experience with stock Google Android. And I don't really know how to explain it other than that. It's just that if you come from an iPhone, this is the phone I would 100% recommend every single time to somebody wanting to try Android for the first time. And what I mean by that is if you think of the iPhone, whether you hate it or love it, you have to admit that the iPhone is probably one of the most fluid experiences you can get on a smartphone in 2024. Just in general, with its application, animations, apps working really well in tandem with the phone's hardware, having regular software updates and feeling like your phone's always secure and always getting the newest features. That is what you get with Google Pixel. Another thing you get, which is a negative in my opinion, like iPhone, the Google, as I talked about earlier, also forces some features on the user. And sometimes this can be just for in case of ease of use. You don't have to worry about it, so to speak. But for some people like me that loves to customize their phone, this is more of an annoyance. But just like the iPhone, there's forced features upon you, like the at a glance or the always on display looking the way it does, app icons being in the certain areas, and then of course the Google search bar at the bottom, always on the fly. You have the Google Gemini being forced upon you, like all this stuff that you get with the Google Pixel. And I know some people love it, and then other people like me are kind of on the fence. It's like, it's cool, but I want options, not just being forced upon me. Next on my list for the Google is just the fluid animations. I love the animations of this phone. I mean, even just locking the device, you can see it kind of like fades into the power button, and then coming out of it, the same thing. It fades out from the power button. And you use your fingerprint to unlock it, and it kind of swirls out with the fade. Going up from the app drawer, you can see it kind of fades out a little bit. It's just everything with this phone has really fluid animations, even going into your apps. It just looks really gorgeous. I love the feeling of this phone just going from app to app, even if it might be a little bit technically slower than other apps like on the Samsung. The animation just looks so much better. I'll try to do both these together with like X here, and I'll kind of give you guys an example of the animation differences. You can see it just kind of gives a little bit more of a rounded feel to the animation that you don't get on Samsung. Now, this is not ugly by any means, but it just is different. I can't really explain it. I hope it's getting across on camera, but there's so many different cool animations implemented in this software that you just are very understated. And yeah, even plugging it in to charge it, you get a little animation, little loop there. And there's just so many cool little things like that that I think is one of the neatest things about the Pixel. Not only that, but like I stated before, even though the internal performance technically is much less than on the Z Fold, the actual day-to-day usage is just fine. I have not really had many issues where I felt like I was lagging behind or apps were crashing or anything like that. Honestly, I've actually noticed more stutters and app lag and stuff like that on the Samsung than I ever did with the Pixel, which is, again, very ironic, being that this basically has double the power of the Pixel. But that just comes down to software optimizations, and you have to hand it to Google for doing that. And once again, it kind of comes back to that whole iPhone experience. It's like you have a phone, you turn it on, it should work. It should do the bare minimum of making it feel like you are using a device that is smart and doing what you want it to do, and it doesn't feel like it's lagging behind. And that's what you're going to get every single time with a Pixel. The next feature is by far the biggest thing for me that I love over the Z Fold with the Pixel is the front display's size. Technically, These are both 6.3 inch devices. I know it might not look like it, but in reality, it's just that this is a little shorter than the Z Fold, but it's wider. So it's the same aspect ratio, but they just changed the way that it works in terms of width and height. So it's really cool to me that this feels like a standard flagship slab phone when you don't have it unfolded. So yeah, it's essentially just a regular phone on the outside, a regular Pixel 9, which is absolutely awesome. I love the feeling of this phone using it on the outer display. Now I understand the argument of like, well, what's the point of that? If you buy a folding phone, don't you want to use the inner display? If you're using the outer display more than the inner display, why not just buy a slab phone? And let me put that to rest. My argument to that is I love the fact that I can use a folding phone now that feels like a regular phone, but then as a party trick, I can open it up and view content on a gigantic 8-inch screen. And not only that, but all the multitasking features I talked about earlier with having two apps running once at the same time and being able to drag and drop functions. And there's so many things you can do on a bigger display that you can't do on a regular slab phone. And that's why, like, I hate people that think that way. It's like, oh, just because the outer display is so good, that automatically makes the inner display inferior. And I just have to put that to rest. That is not the case. That is just a farce. But yeah, the outer display just destroys the Z Fold in my opinion. I agree, I'm not a huge fan of the hinge design here where it's like squared off on the one side and rounded on the other. It really makes it feel like it's only tailored to right-handed people, which I am. But I do feel bad for my left-handed brothers and sisters because, yeah, if you're left-handed, this is going to be very uncomfortable in the hand. It's going to be digging into your palm all the time, and it just doesn't feel as natural. Where the Z Fold, it's kind of the same thing, I suppose, with the, more, I don't know, just squared edges, but this is because of my case it looks like this. Without the case, it is actually squared on all sides, so you're kind of at a disadvantage either way, I guess. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of the big hinge on the left side. This one looks a lot more cohesive with the smaller hinge. But one thing, one reviewer did say, I apologize, I forget who it was, but they did say that the one benefit of having the bigger bezel on the left side here is it does give more real estate for the cases. So what that means is you don't have to worry about the case being flimsy or falling off because they use adhesive. Where on cases with the Z Fold, for instance, it's such a small, tiny spot that they can put it on, it ends up coming off and it looks very, cheap and it just doesn't feel as good. So I do give a leg up to Google for that. Even though it does look kind of ugly without a case on it, it kind of works in a way for the cases. And of course, you got the bigger bezel as well, which is kind of an eyesore. But all around, the fact is the wider display is such a more pleasant, just in general, it's more pleasant to use because of the wider display for texting, for using the keyboard. I mean, just looking at this keyboard in general, like if I wanted to reply to something here. So just look at these two keyboards side by side and you tell me which one looks more comfortable to type on. Yeah, this one looks way better. It looks more like a regular phone. This one just looks like a tiny toy almost. It's so cramped. And yes, it's possible. I mean, you obviously can do everything you can on the inner display with the outer display on the Z Fold, but it's just so much more cramped that it does honestly create carpal tunnel after a while typing on this phone. It's a pain. And then, of course, on the inner display, we also have a bigger 8-inch display versus a 7.6-inch inner display. Now, side by side, you can obviously tell the difference here that the Google Pixel is a little bit shorter but much wider versus the Samsung is a little bit taller but much shorter. It's preference, right? It really depends on how you look at it. The one thing I will give to Samsung, even though it technically is a smaller form factor, is if you're watching videos like on YouTube, for instance, let's say I'm watching this post here. So if we're in full screen mode here, you can see they're roughly about the same size. However, if we rotate the Samsung here and we rotate the Pixel, you can kind of see that it's not reality because side by side you can see they're the same size, but to my eyes, this looks bigger because there's less big bezels. So that's one benefit of having it a little bit less of just a straight up square and more of a 16:9. It's not, but it's almost 16:9. So that really does help make watching content on its landscape mode look a little bit better than it does on the full square you get with the Pixel. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you're looking at devices like this. If you're going to be watching a lot of video content on the inner display, I honestly would probably go with the Samsung over the Pixel just for that alone. But that being said, they both look great for what they are and what they can do. So Again, just comes down to personal preference and what you prefer. One thing I did forget to mention with the Samsung, and I genuinely forgot about this because it's such a small niche feature, it does not come with an S Pen. You have to buy this separately for like $80. I do not recommend that. It's extremely expensive. But if you do go out and buy the Samsung S Pen, it does have S Pen support on the inner display. It sadly does not have the support on the outer display, which is a bummer, but not the end of the world. But because only on the inner display, I honestly never use this. But if you are somebody that uses the S Pen and you love to be able to draw on your tablet or whatever, this is a cool feature that is implemented. There is no any type of stylus support on the Pixel. So if that's a big deal breaker for you, the S Pen is a big thing that you use all the time. That might be a reason to go with the Z Fold over the Pixel. One big thing that is super overlooked, I don't hear anybody talk about this in any of their reviews for some reason with the Pixel, is the haptics. My God, if you've come from iPhone, you know how good haptics can be on a smartphone. And I gotta say, Samsung is definitely like the poorest of the poor when it comes to haptics. And if you don't know what that means, essentially the vibration motor in the phone for certain situations, not just for texting or getting notifications or phone calls, it's for everything. I mean, just opening up an app or changing your brightness or anything on the phone, really, typing on the keyboard, you have haptics. And the Pixel, man, they feel so good. It feels just like the iPhone, but on an Android. I wish I could explain or show you in video, but it's actually impossible. Take my word for it, the haptics on this are gorgeous. They feel great. It makes typing on the phone actually fun to do, if that makes sense. Yeah, just everything on the phone just vibrates these little tiny these little touches, and it makes it feel so much more of a cohesive experience and more luxury is a good way to put it. You don't get that at all with the Samsung. Now, they work, obviously. It has a vibration motor in there. You will feel it in your pocket, but it's just not the same. If I could put the haptics from the Pixel on every Android phone, I would be the happiest guy alive. But yeah, the haptics are a huge, huge A+. The Pixel also has much better voice-to-text depiction over the Samsung. Now, the Samsung's no slouch in any way, shape, or form. So if I was to go up here, how are you today? I hope everybody's doing okay. I want to test to make sure you are hearing me correctly and that everything comes out the way it should be. There you go. So you can see how fast it was depicting my voice. And now if I go to Google, let's see if it looks any different or if it seems like it picks it up a little bit easier, a little bit better. Hello, how are you today? I want to test to make sure everything is going well and that you are typing exactly what I am saying without any problems or mispronunciations. Yeah, so you can tell it's a little quicker. But in reality, it actually does make up for that, and it makes sense to have it quicker, and it just feels like it's smarter. It adds actual punctuation when you need it to. It's really good at reading your voice. And then that comes down to the Google Gemini stuff that's built in straight into the device of the Pixel. Yes, you do have Google Gemini and Circle to Search and all that stuff on the Z Fold as well, but it's just not as intuitive. It's not as built into the phone. And you can tell that with the Pixel. It's something I can't show again on camera. You just have to take my word for it. Trust me, the Pixel just feels like it was made to be used with those features. And that also includes other features like the call screening as well, which is another big thing that's really cool. So if you get a spam call, or you can have it set up just for every phone call. And if you get a phone call, it'll pop up automatically as a screen call. It'll show up on the screen saying somebody's calling you and you can answer or decline. And if you answer it, it'll have this AI voice talk to the person for you. And you can listen to the call or just have it be text, and it'll actually depict the text of what they're saying to you, as well as what your assistant, your Google Assistant, is saying back to that person. It's super neat, and it's really useful. I wish every phone had this feature, because if you get a lot of solicitors calling you, it's a great way to kind of tell them to F off without having to tell them to F off, you know what I'm saying? So it's really nice, and you can tell it to be like, call me back in 10 minutes, or Nick will be there in 5 seconds, or, you can tell it what to do without actually having to pick up the phone and say anything. And if also you're somebody with social anxiety like myself, it's a really big plus for that. And the call screening is awesome. I just wish every phone had that. This next point is probably one of the biggest ones, next to the outer display being bigger for the Pixel being better over the Z Fold, and that is the battery life. Now, don't get me wrong, the Z Fold has a pretty decent battery life. I usually can get anywhere from 5 to 6 hours of on-screen time without much of an issue, unless I'm playing a video game or something a little bit more taxing on the phone. Then you're looking at more like 2 to 3 hours. But all in all, pretty decent. I wasn't displeased with the battery. It was just good. However, the Pixel, I would say leans more to the great side of battery life. I can go anywhere from like 6 to 7. One time I got 8 hours of on-screen time. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. But then again, that was a very non-heavy usage day. It was mostly just scrolling through Twitter and replying to texts and emails. So nothing too crazy. But if you're watching a lot of YouTube content and, playing video games, stuff like that, you will obviously get a lot less than that for on-screen time. But I gotta hand it to Google for having those optimizations in place. And of course, you do have a bigger battery in the Pixel. You get a 4,650 milliamp hour battery versus a 4,400 milliamp hour battery on the Z Fold 6. But yeah, they're both great for battery life, but I gotta hand it to the Pixel. So if battery life's a big thing for you, you're gonna get more out of it with the Pixel. You, of course, also have better cameras with the Pixel versus the Z Fold. That's honestly probably my biggest downgrade or downside to the Z Fold is the cameras. They tried, I'll give them that. They tried to compete with their other flagship devices, but they're just nowhere near it. It does what it needs to do for most cases. I mean, you got a widescreen or an ultra-wide camera, you got a regular camera, and you got a telephoto with 5x optical zoom. Now, I will say, though, that even though the zoom is a little bit better on the Samsung, this is only a 3x optical zoom on the Pixel, the actual photos look just so much better. And that could be a case of the processing with Pixel with also the better lenses. But whatever the case may be, whatever magic they're putting into the photos, they just look so much better on the Google. I'm going to put a couple of side-by-side comparisons, but this is not going to be a full-fledged camera comparison because there's so many more videos out there of that. But just trust me, the Pixel wins almost every single time, both for point-and-click shooting and also RAW shooting or video as well. Just everything looks so much better on the Pixel. And night shots as well. The Pixel just blows the Galaxy out of the water. It really made me sad that I wish I would have had my Pixel when I went on my vacation in the Dominican Republic because the pictures would have looked so much better. But it is what it is. Again, the Galaxy is not terrible. It's better than most cameras out there. But for the price range that this phone comes at and for what it's supposed to be, the pictures, the camera should have been a lot better than what they are. You also have much better face unlock features on the Pixel versus the Z Fold. They both pretty much use the same technology, though, for scanning your face. And in reality, I think both phones, you have to have pretty good lighting for it to work really well. In nighttime situations, neither one work almost at all. But the big benefit the Pixel has over the Galaxy Z Fold 6 is that you can use the face unlock to use it for banking apps, or really any application that involves you using your fingerprint to verify your identity. You can actually just use your face. So that's really cool. I mean, I don't know how much better secured that is versus your fingerprint or if you should trust it, but the option is there. And of course, you have the Google ecosystem over here. Yes, I know Samsung has their own ecosystem, but I think there's more diehard fans to Google's ecosystem these days. I could be wrong on that. But, you get the at-a-glance features. Like I said before, you get Google Weather, which in my opinion is a much better app than the Samsung Weather. It just seems more accurate. I like the AI weather report. It looks cleaner. That kind of stuff I think is really nice for the Pixels. Again, you get those amazing haptics and you get that fluidity that you only get with Pixels with the animations. The Google AI and the Gemini stuff built into the phone that feel like it's specifically made for these devices. It's all just a combination of that is the Google ecosystem that you want with your phone. Now, thankfully, Google accessories like the Pixel Watch and the Pixel Buds and all that stuff, they do work with other Android phones, so there's no problem with that. But it is just one of those things where it is becoming its own ecosystem, and I think Google is really knocking it out of the park with that. And the last part, and this kind of takes off from the Google ecosystem, you get the faster updates. This is Google's baby, so Google owns Android, and Android 15, just came out, so of course the Pixels get it first. And then when 16 comes out, they'll get it first, and so on and so forth. And yeah, so you're getting the most up-to-date features of Android first with the Pixels. And I do love that feature of the Pixel over any other device on Android is you don't have to wait for these updates. You get them right away. So if being the first in line to the biggest updates, the newest updates of Android is a big plus to you and a thing you want in your phone, man, the Pixel is going to be your only option at that point. You're going to have to go with it over anything else because that's the only way to get the fastest versions of Android. All right, so that was everything that was better on the Pixel versus the Z Fold. Now, let's look at some of the tiebreakers, the things where I really couldn't choose a winner, in my opinion. The first thing is they're both expensive. These phones are like $1,800 before discounts and after tax in the USA. It's ridiculous how expensive these phones are. I'm not brushing that aside. I've spent a lot of my money on these phones. Neither one have been sent to me from either or. I'm not biased towards any company, but yeah, they're both expensive. And that's why I feel nitpicking is honestly warranted with these devices, because for almost $2,000, these should be, in essence, perfect devices. Now, I understand we're probably never ever going to get the perfect smartphone. I've heard rumors that the OnePlus Open is the best folding smartphone, and newsflash, I have one coming in the mail very soon, so I might be doing a comparison with that soon. But yeah, it's just folding phones are just not perfect yet. Hopefully soon we will get there, but for $2,000 almost, yeah, kind of ridiculous how expensive these things are. Both are not durable. Let's just put that out there, all right? Neither one of these is going to survive a train wreck. Neither one of these are going to fall from a 6-foot drop and probably be okay, even with a case on it. They're both rated at water and dust resistant, but neither one I would put underwater or like in the pool or anything. You're going to be screwed. That's just the case. That's just the way it is with the folding devices. They're not durable. And obviously the inner displays are way less durable than the outer displays because they're not real glass. They're this like thin micro glass, they call it, but in reality it's plastic. So yeah, you're going to run into durability issues with any of these devices. That is something to always take into account. I would recommend getting some type of warranty with these devices if you're spending almost $2,000 on them. Just keep that in mind, that durability is not going to be these devices' strong suit. No pun intended. Both of these have really good speakers. I mean, I can't really show you on camera. I've seen other reviewers try, and it doesn't really come through on video anyway. But just take it from me. Either way, you're going to have a good time, a good experience listening to music. The one thing I will say, though, the placement of the speakers is very different on the Samsung. So we have one speaker up on top and one on the bottom, but they're both on the left side. So the only way to get that stereo surround sound is to rotate it to the side. So you have to be watching content in landscape mode to get the most out of your speaker. Not the case on the Pixel, which I really like. So we have a speaker on the left side here. So when we have it open, it's going to be on your left side. And then on the bottom, it's on the right side. So no matter if you're watching it in portrait or landscape, you always have that stereo sound, which is really neat. So I think that is technically a leg up for the Google, but I'm going to give them a tie because in reality, they're both the same quality and sound and in their actual volume levels and stuff like that. So that's why I don't think there's necessarily a better one to choose here. But yeah, that is kind of a little bit of a cool, neat feature on the Pixel versus the Samsung. Both have really good hinges. I know a lot of people talk about these, but it's true. They both have very strong hinges that can stay at different angles depending on what you want them to do. They both have the cool hinge features like the flex mode, so you can watch videos on top and you can type on the bottom and stuff like that. They both all do the same thing. But yeah, they both have very strong hinges that will stay in place wherever you need them to be. And they feel really good to open and close. I will say, though, I like the feeling and the sound of the Samsung's hinge just a little bit more. Just that, yeah, it's super satisfying little snap when you close it. I love that, man. It's a very good feeling, very satisfying. And again, it feels very tough and rugged. It doesn't feel like a chintzy, breakable hinge. It feels like it's going to hold out for many years to come. And I got to hand it to Google as well. This does feel very good, very solid. It's just not as snappy when it closes or when it opens. It doesn't feel like it wants to open. You have to really pry on it versus the Samsung. So you can kind of give or take on that one. I think it's personal preference. I would probably give it to the Z Fold if I had to choose one, but relatively, they're both very good hinges. And this next point is just that the designs are relatively the same to me. I don't really like one over the other. I used to think the Pixel was pretty damn ugly. I still kind of do, with that big hinge on the left side only working towards right-handed users, and then the placement of the giant chunky camera bezel. It's just not the prettiest looking phone. It has grown on me a little bit since using it, but it's not a deal breaker. But yeah, it's not going to like turn heads as much as some other phones do on the market. And even Samsung, I don't think it's a very ugly phone per se. I'm not a huge fan of the 3 placement of the cameras, but it's not ugly. It is what it is. But I will say, laying on a table, it's kind of annoying how much this one rocks with that, that placement of the cameras versus the Pixel doesn't rock nearly as much. If you have a case on, it does help, but without the case, it rocks a lot. So just keep that in mind. But all around, design-wise, I think they both did an okay job. Neither one is great. Neither one's terrible. Both of them, again, have the Google AI features built in. That's why I'm not going to go into all those different things and show you differences between them because they're relatively the same thing. You both have Circle to Search. You both have Google Gemini. All of that is going to be the same. The only real difference, like I stated, was the voice-to-text depiction as well as the call screening, and that's why I wanted to bring that up with the Pixel. But other than that, everything else is the same, man. I mean, you're getting all the Google stuff on both phones, and I like that about Google. They're not 100% making those proprietary features to the Pixel. So good on you, Google, for being cool like that. And then the last thing is connectivity. Been perfectly fine on both phones. Bluetooth is the same. Wi-Fi is the same. Call quality is the same. If you're looking for a phone that can do everything a smartphone should, these will both do it just fine. You shouldn't have to worry about anything like that. I've not noticed anything catastrophic like, oh, this phone disconnects from Bluetooth every 5 minutes, or this phone disconnects from Wi-Fi, or the Wi-Fi speeds suck. The Wi-Fi speeds, there's no differences. They're all exactly the same. So, final verdict after this like hour-long video, what should you choose? Should you go with the Galaxy Z Fold 6, or should you go with the Pixel 9 Pro Fold? Stupidly long names. I'm so tired of these names, man. They're just huge mouthfuls at this point. But yeah, anyway, so what's my personal pick? It's such a hard decision, in my opinion. I love both these devices for different reasons, but in the end, my personal opinion, I'm probably going to hand it to the Pixel over the Z Fold. And it's not by a mile. It's not like, oh, this is obvious win, I'm throwing this away. I'm going to be keeping this one just as a backup in case for some reason this breaks or I want to switch back. And like I said, the OnePlus Open is coming in the mail soon, so that might be my new runner-up. Who knows? But for right now, the Pixel 9 Pro Fold wins, mainly for its outer display being bigger and more user-friendly when I'm not wanting to open the Fold, because most people out there who have a folding device, you probably open your phone maybe once every other day. If you do it every day, that's awesome. But for me, I'm definitely an every other day person. I don't usually open the phone unless I need it for a specific reason. But I just love that I have that option if needed. And of course, you do get a bigger inner display with the Google Pixel. So if you're viewing photos, or I don't know, if you're using anything that does take up the real estate of the entire screen, it looks very, very good compared to the Samsung's a little bit smaller 7.6-inch display. You also, of course, have the better cameras and the smoother UI experience. And oh my God, those haptics. Oh man, those haptics. They're so damn good. So yeah, I have my reasons for why I choose the Pixel, but it's not a perfect phone, and there's definite pluses going with the Z Fold. So I think either way, you're a winner. I know it's kind of a cop-out to say that, but it's generally true. Both these phones are great in their own rights. I just personally choose the Pixel for those reasons. So yeah, let me know in the comment section below which is your winner after watching this video, or if you have both of these, which one do you prefer? Or if you're looking to buy one of these, which one are you going to choose based off this video? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching my versus video of the Z Fold 6 versus the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. Leave a like to show your support as always. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We'll hopefully see you in the next one. Peace out.